The door clicked shut, and for a moment the office felt impossibly small. Laura Bennett stood frozen, listening to the sound echo in the empty conference room. It wasn't loud, but it carried a weight she hadn't anticipated. That one soft click had changed everything, or maybe it had revealed what had been hiding beneath the surface for months. Her heart thumped in a rhythm she hadn't felt in years, the kind of rhythm that reminded her she was still alive, still capable of feeling more than obligation and routine. She breathed deeply, trying to convince herself that nothing had happened. But she knew the truth. Something had happened, quietly and deliberately. Ethan Cole sat back down in his chair, as if unsure what to do next. He looked at her with that steady, honest gaze that had disarmed her so many times before. He wasn't bold or forward, just present. And in that presence, Laura felt the stirrings of emotion she had buried under career, family, and habit. She knew the office walls weren't just protecting their professional lives. They were the only thing standing between two people who, against all reason, were drawn to each other. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice careful. Laura forced herself to smile, a soft, almost sad smile. "I think I am," she said, though the words felt hollow. She wanted to tell him so much more about the loneliness she had lived with, the longing she had pushed aside, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she watched him as he gathered his notes, their hands brushing slightly over the stack of papers. The contact was fleeting, but it felt like an electric spark in the still air. They left the office that night separately, walking in opposite directions. Chicago was quiet, the rain having stopped, leaving slick streets that reflected the streetlights, like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Laura's mind replayed the conference room, the quiet click of the door, the way Ethan's eyes had lingered on hers. Nothing explicit had happened, nothing that could be condemned or whispered about. And yet, the intimacy of that moment, this shared vulnerability, felt like crossing a line she could never uncross. The next day, Laura tried to return to routine. She kept meetings professional, emails precise, and conversations polite. The world had shifted. Every glance from Ethan now carried weight. Every smile, every thoughtful question, every pause felt loaded with meaning. She chastised herself, telling herself it was dangerous to feel this way. She reminded herself of Mark, of the life she had built, of the vows she had made. And yet, every time she tried to push the feelings away, they only returned stronger. Whispering that her heart had been asleep for far too long, work continued, deadlines came and went, campaigns were launched. Laura excelled, but her mind often wandered to Ethan's laughter. The way he listened, the way he seemed to notice the parts of her no one else did. She realized with a sinking clarity that she had been living half a life, fulfilling roles, meeting expectations, and suppressing desires that didn't have an outlet at home. Mark was kind, predictable, reliable, but he was not present in the ways that mattered to her anymore. Their conversations were polite, their time together functional. Loneliness had become a companion she refused to name until Ethan's presence forced her to confront it, and then the news came that would change everything again. Ethan had been offered a full-time position at a company in Seattle. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Laura felt proud, truly proud, but also a deep pang of fear. He would leave, and with him would go the connection she hadn't known how to handle but couldn't ignore. On his last day, he stopped by her office. The door stayed open this time, the difference subtle but symbolic. "I wanted to say goodbye," he said, voice steady, a faint nervousness betraying his calm. "And to thank you for everything." Laura smiled, her chest tight. "You're going to do great things," she said. But her voice carried more than encouragement. It carried unspoken regrets, the weight of moments they shared that would never repeat. He hesitated, then added, "Do you think? In another life?" His question hung in the air, unfinished, delicate. Laura shook her head softly, tears threatening, but restrained. "Some connections aren't meant to last," she said gently. "They're meant to wake us up." Ethan nodded, understanding far more than he could have known. "You woke me up," he said simply, and left. The click of the office door followed him out, and Laura sat alone, surrounded by the quiet hum of the empty office. She felt a mixture of relief, sorrow, and clarity. She had crossed a threshold, experienced emotions she had denied, and now had to decide how to live with that knowledge. That night, Laura went home and faced a reality she could no longer ignore. She told Mark the truth, not every detail, but enough. Enough to stop pretending, enough to reclaim honesty. It was difficult. Some nights were heavy with silence, some nights, tears. Some nights, uncomfortable but necessary conversations. Slowly, Mark began to understand, though their marriage didn't immediately transform. It was fragile, tentative, and real. Laura began to confront her own life. She recognized that the real danger hadn't been Ethan. It had been the complacency, the emotional absence she had accepted for too long. The lesson was painful, but essential. Ignoring a heart that no longer feels alive is a betrayal in itself. Months later, she stood in her kitchen, morning sunlight spilling over the countertops. She was alone, but not lonely. She had grown into the realization that living honestly, even when it's difficult, is the only way to remain connected to the most vital parts of herself. The memory of Ethan remained, a quiet echo of awakening. A reminder that sometimes life gives us brief, intense moments, not to keep forever, but to show us who we are and what we truly need. Laura knew she might never feel that connection again. And perhaps that was the point. The door she once let close had opened more than just a conference room. It had opened her eyes to her own heart. And for the first time in years, she felt alive, aware, and ready to embrace a life built not on routine or habit, but on honesty and emotional truth. In the end, she realized that sometimes love isn't about possession. Sometimes it's about awakening. And sometimes one quiet, deliberate moment is enough to change everything. No one noticed when Laura Bennett stayed late that night, no one except the intern sitting 3 desks away, still working while the rest of the Chicago office floor went dark. The city lights outside the glass windows blinked like quiet witnesses. Laura had told herself she would leave on time. She didn't, and that small decision became the first crack in a life that had looked solid from the outside. Laura was 42, respected, organized, and known for never making mistakes. She was the kind of senior marketing director people trusted. Her calendar was full, her inbox always clean, her smile professional and calm. At home, she had a husband, Mark, and a life that looked complete. But completeness is not the same as happiness, and Laura had learned that slowly, over years of quiet dinners and short conversations. Ethan Cole had joined the company 3 months earlier as a summer intern. He was young, 24, with no idea how quickly a career could shape or shake someone's life. He worked hard, asked thoughtful questions, and never tried to stand out too loudly. Laura noticed him because he listened. In meetings, he didn't interrupt. He watched, remembered details others forgot. That kind of attention was rare. That Tuesday evening, Laura walked past his desk and stopped. He looked up, surprised. "You know you can go home," she said. "I know," Ethan replied, smiling. "I just want to finish this." She nodded, meaning to walk away, but instead she added that effort matters. The words stayed with him, and with her. Over the next few weeks, their schedules began to overlap more often, late meetings, tight deadlines, quick conversations that stretched longer than planned. Laura told herself it was normal. Mentorship was part of her job. She had helped many interns before. But this felt different, and she didn't want to admit why. Ethan asked about her career path. Laura answered honestly, not with rehearsed advice, but with real stories, missed chances. Long hours, compromises she once believed were temporary. Ethan listened, like the answers mattered. That alone felt comforting. At home, Laura felt the opposite. Mark was not cruel or distant on purpose. He was simply comfortable. He spoke about work, bills, weekend plans. He didn't ask how she felt. When she tried to explain her exhaustion, he nodded but changed the subject. Years earlier, that might have been enough. Now it wasn't. One evening, the office elevator broke down and Laura and Ethan took the stairs together. Halfway down, Ethan laughed lightly and said, "I didn't think corporate life would feel this lonely." Laura stopped walking. The word echoed in her chest. Lonely. She felt exposed, as if he had said something she was trying not to think. About, "It doesn't always feel that way," she replied, but her voice lacked certainty. Ethan looked at her, curious but respectful. He didn't push. That restraint made the moment heavier, not lighter. From then on, Laura noticed herself thinking about him outside of work. She noticed how his emails made her pause, how his smile felt warmer than it should. She also noticed guilt, sharp and sudden. She reminded herself of boundaries. She tried to keep conversations short. But emotions don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. The office became quieter as summer turned toward fall. One night, Laura found herself alone with Ethan in a conference room, reviewing a presentation. The clock on the wall read 8:47 p.m. Rain tapped against the windows. The city felt far away. They finished the last slide, and Ethan stood up, collecting his things. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me with this." "You earned it," Laura replied. He hesitated, then spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" "That's not about work." She should have said no. She knew that, but she didn't. "Okay," she said. "Do you ever feel like you followed all the rules and still ended up somewhere you didn't expect?" The question was quiet, almost. "Careful!" Laura felt her throat tighten. She stood up slowly. "Yes," she said, "more than I want to admit." The room fell silent. Not awkward silence, honest silence. The kind that makes time feel slow. Ethan nodded as if he understood more than she had said. He took a step back. "I should go," he said gently. Laura watched him reach for the door. She knew this was the moment where things could return to normal, where she could protect the life she had built, even if it felt empty. She felt fear and relief and something deeper pulling her forward. "Wait," she said. Ethan turned. She looked at the door, then back at him. Her heart was racing, but her voice was steady. "Close it," she said. The door closed softly, sealing the moment behind them. And with that sound, Laura knew her life had begun to change even, though nothing visible had happened yet.